Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, hosted by Alison Humphries. The Recruitment Leadership Podcast is here to help those in the recruitment industry gain awareness and understanding on the hot topics faced by those in the business of hiring people. In each episode, Alison Humphries is joined by a fellow expert to offer professional knowledge, insight and advice on the biggest subjects affecting recruitment businesses. It's the podcast to listen to for recruitment business frontrunners seeking expert information from industry-leading advisors. Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. Thanks for joining us. This is another in our season focusing in on all aspects of business development for recruitment businesses. And today I am joined by the lovely Kate O'Neill. Hello, Kate.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Kate is has got a very funny LinkedIn profile. She calls herself the recruitment world's Nessa, a BD beast, and no nonsense. So yes. I'm looking forward to talking to her about aspects of BD. Kate now works as a self-employed recruitment coach and trainer. She's also a behavioural profiling specialist. And our focus today is actually on the human interaction part of business development rather than the electronic generated parts. Okay. So Kate, just give us a very brief synopsis of your story, and then we'll move on to specific questions that I know our listeners will be burning to hear your answers to.
Yeah, so my recruitment journey, I suppose, started, probably 12 and a half years ago, I think. So I started as a rookie doing engineering and IT recruitment. And then I moved to an agency where I was there for the rest of my consulting career, basically doing pharmaceutical, like commercial sales recruitment. And I sort of progressed through that company. I was running a division and a billing manager. And then I decided to leave. I wanted to do something different, set up on my own. Did it right smack in the middle of COVID, which when I look back was a pretty crazy thing to do, but I'm so glad I did it now. And now I'm sort of 4.5 years down the line-ish, and I do a lot of work with, I do a lot of work with rookies, but also more experienced consultants. I love business development, so I end up being drawn into lots of projects around that. And I'm also a behavioural profiling specialist, and I'm fascinated by people and how we can lead people better in our industry and develop the consultants and just what makes people tick.
It's a very significant factor, behavioural profile, in their approach to and frankly beliefs about business development, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. Massively.
So let's get down into it. As an opener, Kate, when we were speaking previously, you made the point that there are a lot of people out there in recruitment sphere saying phone calls are dead. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it'd be no surprise for me to say that I don't agree with that. I think, the word cold calling, I think, it doesn't need to be cold calling anymore. There are so many ways we can make things warm, where when the first time we speak to somebody, they're sort of already aware of us. And I don't like to call it that anymore, because again, you mentioned about people's beliefs about business development. That word, or the two words cold call, hold a lot of negative beliefs that can filter into negative behaviours. So I don't like to call it that, but phone calls, no, to me, they're not dead. I think we're in an industry that is fueled by people, and we've got two sort of revenue streams in a way, or customer target basis, clients and candidate. And we need to be able to build a relationship with them. And there's only so much you can do over an email. You haven't got tone of voice. It's really hard to connect to people that way. Yeah, you might initially start speaking that way, but eventually we want to speak over the phone or a face-to-face meeting, if that also isn't too crazy an idea. But I just think I think there's parts of our job now with all the technological advances that we can outsource to AI or, some sort of rep tech. But that people element of what we do, you can't replicate, and it needs to be done by us. And the way to do that is over the phone or, like I said, meeting people in person.
And I'm very, very much with you on this. I think it has never, in my 40 years in the industry, it's never been easier to do research into your target clients, to automate preliminary warm-up conversations with them, and to find a hook, something that they're doing that has prompted you to call them. It's never been easier, but all of this is a waste unless we get the person-to-person interaction right, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're both very much pro phone and in real life contact, shall we call it?
Yeah.
What mistakes do you see leaders in recruitment making when they try to improve BD? Because there's a lot of core reluctance out there, isn't there? And a lot of people give up because they say, I'm just not getting any results from this. So let's just think about improving BD as a change plan in recruitment businesses. Tell our audience why you think often they're ineffective.
I think one of the things that's missed very early on, and you've got to start here, is everybody is going to come into your office or remote office, whatever it is, with their own beliefs. And these beliefs can come from things that happen to them in work. They can come from outside of work, who knows? But they've got beliefs. And a lot of the time, from my experience, their beliefs about sales, business development are negative. Now, your beliefs then determine your thoughts. So that you're then having negative thoughts about business development. You're then feeling negative because your thoughts affect your feelings, and then your feelings affect your behaviour. So this reluctance to say pick up the phone, for example, it's a struggle for a lot of these leaders, and I get it, because they might be giving them training. They may be sitting with them and helping them, but they're still not doing it, and they're banging their heads against a brick wall and thinking, I don't know what can we do here. And it's, if you don't tackle the mindset stuff and work through what are their beliefs, and then help them understand, help them change them in the right way, you can give them all the training in the world, the best training there is, but they won't change their habits and behaviors. And that's the thing I get missed. And it's a shame, because there are some people that they sort of get labeled, they're not good enough for BD, they'll never be good at it. But actually they could be. But it's that bit that needs to be tackled first. But I understand why it's missed.
I think my experience is similar to yours. From time to time, although I'm, very much in the board advisor exec coaching space, from time to time, I get contacts from people saying, could you just come and do some BD training? And I said, well, in what? What are you hoping to achieve from this business development training? What's wrong with what you do at the moment? And then you discover that whoever I'm speaking to is under the impression that this is merely a skills issue, and that if people are given the skills, they will overnight change their behaviours. And so just building on what you said about beliefs, I totally agree that finding out about those is really important. But also changing your approach to BD at an organisational level is not just about skills, is it? It's also about things like having the resources, having the good data, having, incentives, having the time to do it. So sometimes it's a question of taking something else away, and then, repetition, so that people feel themselves getting better, even before they bring in fees directly from there. So, I think we do have to evaluate change programs with milestones rather than just, well, did you make any placements as a result of doing this BD? You might say, okay, well, how many calls did we convert into meetings? For how many meetings did we actually get a referral, not necessarily a job order?
Yeah, I think that's one of the mistakes, probably.
Yeah,
is that they're not measuring or helping them celebrate the little wins that accumulate to the big. And it's sort of, well, we did that training and they've not won 10 clients in a month, and it's like,
that's
wait,
it,
hold
exactly
on.
Isn't it?
You've just got to give them a chance. And also, so a lot of what I end up doing is being the middleman between management and them, and sort of, but also a lot of people don't know the difference between training and coaching, because a lot of trainers call themselves coaches. It's two different things. So often I'll have a chat with somebody and it'll be like, that's actually not a training need, that is a coaching need. And they throw training at it. Again, they think it's a skills gap or a knowledge gap, and it's not. It's a behavioural thing. And again, that's where the sort of mindset stuff comes in. And the behavioural stuff has to be has to be dealt with. Because otherwise, I suppose, I mean, there's two ways it could go. You know, you could have somebody sitting there that you're sort of not seeing any potential in, but actually they could be an untapped resource if you just sort of dealt with whatever's going on up here, which could be quite an easy thing, or might be a bit of a longer term thing, but it could unlock so much potential in that person just from them believing
Could you just
in
give us some
themselves more.
insights into how you do that? Because the beliefs that people hold are very often, usually held at a subconscious level, aren't they? They're not even aware that they have them. So when you start working with a new group of people in a recruitment business, how do you go about surfacing those?
So one-to-one sessions work so much better. If you can do group coaching sessions, but people don't tend to be as vulnerable, and also you're one coach dealing with all these people, so it's difficult to you can't probe individually on different things. So one-to-one sessions 100%. So I'm a trained coach, take them through a coach. I use the GROW model, so I'll take them through a coaching conversation, take them through that GROW model. But what we'll do initially is I'll unpick what are the things they want to get better in, where do they feel they're at now. I get to know their whole background. So they'll fill in what I call a thought sheet for me, but it delves into what they think their values are, what's the thing they've achieved in life they're most proud of, what's been the most challenging thing, like everything. And initially they're thinking, hold on, she's coming to help me with my job. Why am I telling her about my life? But I'm unpicking who is this person I've got sitting in front of me. Usually I'll profile them as well, so I can adapt, and we'll go through their profile so they start to understand themselves more. A lot of light bulbs come from that, because they're like, oh, that's why I do that. That's why I think that way. That's why that's challenging. So we work all of that out at the start and where they want to get to and all these things. And it's also about me building a relationship with them, because they need to feel safe with me. So when we have our sessions, they come into that room, they know how it's going to work. They know there's a level of confidentiality and they can trust me, and that that's safe to open up to me. Now, some people open up straight away. First session. And look, some of the things we talk about are difficult. Some people get emotional. Others, it's a longer process. It might take me till session 4 or 5. And then you start to see them. When I say crack, it's crack in a good way. They sort of start letting things out. And I find it so rewarding, because you get these massive light bulb moments where they've only just realized it themselves, where they're like, oh my God, I didn't think of that before, or that happened. And because people think work is a separate thing to the rest of their life, but it's not. So there's something that might have happened outside of work that they realise is affecting something in work, and then you can work with it and deal with all that stuff. So it's one-to-one sessions.
Are you able to give us an example without breaching anybody's confidentiality?
So there's somebody I'm working with at the moment who is doing a role where there's a lot of business development expected in that position, but fairly new to recruitment, fairly new to business development. And when I say they've got potential, they've got a lot of potential. So I've sat and done desk coaching, listened to their calls, amazing. But when I'm not there, things change, and behaviour is different, and there's not as much action, there's lots of internal problems, blah, blah, blah. Now, what actually is happening there is an issue, a family issue, where a family member isn't present anymore. That person has then replaced that family member with the owner of this company. So they're looking up to them as a sort of replacement of the person they don't have in their life. So instead of them coming into work and focusing on what they need to do and working to their goals, and they didn't even really realise this until we started exploring it, they are so obsessed with keeping this person happy and being their favourite and, all this stuff. Their focus is being taken away from the things that would actually make that person happy, which is doing their job. So it's all because it's all consuming, but it's come from that issue. So it's working around that. So, and actually getting the person to see, if you just did what you're meant to be doing, which is your role, and all the goals you want to achieve filter into that person would be over the moon with you. So This isn't a training need here. Obviously, I am doing some training as well, as because there's some gaps, but this is a behavioural coaching need, and something that this person didn't really even recognise was going on.
No, I can imagine that would be quite the revelation. And how interesting that they were attempting to please the owner of the business without, by looking good rather than doing the actual job. Okay, thanks.
It was a revelation for the manager as well.
I'm sure.
They were reading this person's behaviour, as something different and misunderstanding it. So there was a lot of conflict, when
Right.
actually, if you fill in these gaps, it's like, oh, right,
Yeah.
this is what's going on. Now, can you
Okay.
imagine, in a lot of agencies, if you get these things happen, it ends in somebody being sacked or somebody leaving, because it's just, there's no way of knowing how to resolve it, or even know that that's what's going on. Oh, he's not,
Mm.
that person's not working, they're not doing their job, get rid.
All right, thank you for that. Now let's narrow the focus for a moment. My next question is about the core important components of a BD call, a person-to-person call. Kate, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If I asked you to identify 3 boxes which you think are the most important ones to tick, what would they be?
Okay, I'm going to do this in a weird order, but there's a reason for it. So one bit of the call that's really important is the part where we provide solutions. Now, most consultants think that the solution we provide is we find great candidates, which is a solution, granted that we do, but everybody says that. So it's the boring solution because it doesn't make us stand out. So one of the reason why that call is important is, and it sort of builds into the prep that needs to be done before, the products, the services you provide need to be identified. So you know in that part of the call, it can be powerful because you're going to tailor what you're going to sell, in inverted commas.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is very important, because a lot of people don't actually sell in a call. They sort of skip past all the amazing things that we can offer and do. But before that, we need to know what the needs of the person are, the pain points, all the things that are going on in I say their agency, it's because my BD is to an agency, in their company, and questions. So, asking lots of open questions, not going just straight in with like, basically, what roles have you got for me to fill at the moment? Like, be inquisitive, like find things out. No, not a lot of consultants will ask like, what plans have you got for the business over the next 3, 6, 9 months? Be a part of their world and learn the intel that's going to help you provide the tailored right solutions. So the question bit is so important. I think some people do ask questions, but they tend to be quite closed, or they don't ask enough questions. It's sort of, I need to get off the phone as quick as possible, so I'll ask you a couple of things and then I'll go. So that for me is really important. And also, I suppose it kind of ties into the whole call, but the investment in the relationship in that call. So listening, like really listening to that person, making them feel heard, making them feel like this call is not all about me and my agenda, but I also want to connect with you. I always think it's great towards the end of the call, in your sort of closing bit, to introduce something like a meeting or book that next follow-up, continue that relationship. But I think when I do a lot of call coaching and I'm listening, there's points where the other person is trying to connect. They might crack a little joke or something. And because the person is so focused on what do I say next, or they're just not in it properly, they don't listen and they sort of don't react and they're not engaging. The little chit chat you have sometimes where you're not really talking about work, but you find little common ground, it gets missed. And that is so key, especially early on when you're reaching out. You might be a temp agency listening that's done a drop-in meeting. It could be face-to-face. The rapport building is like so important, and it filters through the whole call. So I'd probably say, I've not given you an answer for the third one, because the rapport building is all of it, but the questions, 1,000,000% are so important, and providing the tailored solutions, like
Rather than selling the whole bucket of what you do, as it were.
Or just, we'll find you great people, because they're told that every day, multiple times. So
yeah, indeed. Regular listeners will know I hugely agree with you, Kate, about the importance of carefully and conversationally taking a prospect down the route to expressing a need, a pain point themselves. So much more important than a recruiter guessing what it is or telling the client. Getting the client to actually agree and say, yes, I do need, that is a problem I have and it is worth acting on, is almost getting them to give you an invitation to come to the sales part of your, the solution selling part of your call, isn't it? I would probably add as my third thing, and it's linked to rapport, is getting the opening right. Too many calls start with, "Hi, it's Alison from X Recruiter. How are you today?" And I'm not saying that's never going to work. And certainly if you've spoken to someone before, it might be more acceptable. But a cold call that starts with, "How are you today?" absolutely sets my teeth on edge. And I get a lot of them from people who haven't booked an appointment. And if they say, "How are you today?" it tells me you haven't got a clue how to open this, because it's actually a credible and a credible opening is absolutely critical for the direction of the whole of the rest of a call. I don't feel, and this might be because of my generation, I don't know, but I don't feel that somebody, a stranger phoning me to inquire about my welfare is a good start to that call. I want to know what's prompted them to call me. I want to know what makes them think they're credible in this space, for example, who else they've worked with, and if there's a point of difference, and then I might be willing to engage in a phone call, but chat, no.
I think people don't put enough thought into it. So like for me, when I've done my prep for my BD, I know why I've added an agency to my list. I know what's made me want to get in touch with them. And I use that as my opener. So they know sort of like, well, what's made you reach out to me today? I think it gets more complicated because you've got different personality types that we're reaching out to. So for example, you're going to get, so if you rang me, I'm very similar to you. I just want someone to get to the point. Tell me why you're ringing, what you offer me. Is this worth me speaking to you? Other personality types are fluffier, I like to say. And they sometimes if somebody's too straight into it, they're a bit like, whoa, hold on a minute, what's going on here? But we're not psychic at the same time. So when we're reaching out to somebody for the very first time, and we've never spoken to them before, we would be hazarding a massive guess at that because we don't know. That'd be more for maybe a follow-up. But yeah, I think you sometimes get people, they're engaged, they're listening, they sort of give a response, but also you need to know why you're calling. You need to make it clear, and not, for God's sake, not I'm ringing to see if you need any staff at the moment or you need any whatever. Give something that makes somebody go, yeah, actually I will speak to this person. That's quite interesting.
And the ideal is something that your prospect or a prospect's company has done that you've read about or noticed.
Yeah, just anything. It could be something you saw on their LinkedIn profile or their website, but it just shows them you give a crap, basically. Like you've not just randomly picked up the phone and thought, I'll make a BD call for a KPI today. Like there's a reason for this. Like you've shown an interest. It's the same when you maybe send a first LinkedIn message to somebody. Like show them you've like paid some attention to them and what they do and their company, other than I just think it can be a bit lazy sometimes, can't it, when people just don't put any thought into it.
I think that's absolutely true. And interestingly, on the clearly automated outreach emails that I am deluged with daily, sometimes I think, has nobody ever learned anything about selling services?
I know,
because they open with, now you've just clicked on a box that says, "Oh, Kate O'Neill has sent you a message." And then, and I'm sure you would never do this, Kate, and then you open the message and it starts with, "Hi, my name is Kate O'Neill. I do this, this and this. And are you interested?" That is nothing to do with me. That is all about them, their agenda. And please don't tell me again what your name is as the opening sentence of your approach.
And I sometimes don't even get called the right name. So that really annoys me. Yeah. So it's the wrong name. But yeah, it's just spammy. I can tell it's been auto-generated. Like I had somebody email me the other day, call me the wrong name, and then ask if I was interested in being a coach. So I was like, well, you've not looked at anything. It's just, who's going to respond to that?
Well, I can only assume that they get very lucky, and if they send out enough of these, that by complete accident, one of them will hit someone who's just come out of a meeting saying, we need to do something about this. Anyway, one of the issues that I've touched on a previous podcast is I've observed, I don't know if this is your experience, that many of the, I'm going to generalize here, but many of the more recent joiners to the industry, I'm talking about since COVID, struggle to make a meaningful conversation with clients unless they are talking about a job. And linked to that, there's a sort of single objective focus from a number of calls I listen to. where if they phone to, oh, I don't know, they've got a really interesting candidate, they're trying to market them out and get them some interviews. And that is the only thing that they gear their call around. And they end up with a straight no is odds on, it's going to be that as compared to a yes. But they don't seem to be able to hold multiple objectives in their heads at the same time. So I'd like your thoughts on that. Actually, that's 2 points, isn't it? Let's deal with one first, the one about struggling to make a meaningful conversation unless you're talking about a job brief. What's your advice there, Kate?
So what happens, and I see this a lot, is they get very focused on these KPIs they've got to hit in their targets. So in their head, and we know this isn't realistic, they believe the purpose of a BD call is to pick up a job and a client. And if they don't achieve that, it's not good. That I've simplified it, but that's what they believe. So they go in with this agenda. I have to get a client, I have to pick up a job. And then, so as a result, they start talking about it. That's all they feel they can talk about. And if they can't talk about that, or there are no jobs, well, then I shouldn't be speaking to this person. They don't think outside of that. Okay, there might not, and again, that's very transactional. They're very transactional in their approach. It's very blinkered. So I see it a lot. And it's sort of getting out of their head. Take that is the end goal, right? But just get rid of it. Just scratch it out of your mind, and getting them to see that you are making these calls to build relationships and gather some information. That is it. So if you come away from that call and you didn't get past the gatekeeper, but you got a phone number and you found out when they're next in, some little ticks there. If you came off a call with a hiring manager and they're not hiring at the moment, but you found out that they do use agencies and they've had a bad experience that you can solve, great. Now, let's get these follow-ups in place. Let's get these little wins. It's getting that out of their heads that, I wish we could just ring a client and pick a job up on a first call, but that's not the reality of what we do. And they're very transactional and blinkered, and it's getting them to think more strategically and outside of that box. I hate using that terminology, think it's like a box, but it is kind of.
It's interesting. I mean, back in the days when I was running a substantial recruitment business, I did have a lot of success retraining people from call center backgrounds. But one of the things that it was really obvious to me is that despite the fact that they said that their current job in a call center was boring and repetitive, many of them were unable to develop a conversation over time. And that was because they were used to a 15-minute script and it's a yes or a no at the end. What I think we're agreed on is that great recruitment business development arises over multiple touch points, and the great recruiters, the people that continue to generate high value business and retain clients, are those that can talk business and as well as create rapport. Mediocre recruiters are only able to talk about jobs, and that makes their conversations really quite transactional, and
they tend to just chase live jobs. That's all they do, is go on the job boards. And you know what's really funny, you brought that example up, because I started out in a call centre, and there was quite a big group of us that were made redundant from a call centre in Cardiff, and we all joined this recruitment company, our first role in recruitment, and I think it was the only one that lasted, and for that reason. And I say a lot, some agency owners will say to me now, we're going to hire salespeople, call centres will be great, and I warn them and I just say, look, they can be great, but you've got to remember their sales cycle is call, sell, done. Put it on the board. Call, sell, done. Sell or don't sell. But if you do sell, it's immediate. You put it on the board, done. There's not this same long conversations over, like you said, lots of time. And then nothing might happen still. You still might not get anything out of it. And I found it frustrating when I started, because I was like, it took me a few months to get my first placement. It killed me. I was feeling like I was failing, and I wanted things done yesterday. And, we know it doesn't work like that. It's, you ask them if they want something, they either want it or they don't, and then they leave and you don't speak to them again, probably. So it's so different to recruitment, isn't it? Very different.
Very, very. And, I think we'll probably need to do a follow-up on account development, because that's a whole other topic, that
Yeah,
account development is not a customer service call. Anyway, I think the example we were discussing there leads us neatly to my last big question, which is about the other processes involved in BD outside of the personal interaction between a recruiter and a client.
Yeah.
So like me, I imagine when you go into clients, you look at the whole of their business development process, not just the phone conversation, as it might be.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most important things that recruitment business leaders should be auditing in their processes at the moment?
So one is the prep that they're doing before. And I spend a lot of time training on this because it's rarely done that well, I would say. And it can be seen as something that's not necessary, time consuming, but it saves you time. And I know, because I do it myself. I'm not just saying, well, I did this when I was a consultant however many years ago. Like, I do it now. It's so important, and it makes their outreach better. So they're not just going on the job boards and looking for who's hiring, are they scoping out a market, market mapping, like who are the people I want to work with in the niche that I work, for example, and who are the decision makers? Because what a lot of them will do, they'll just find one name and they'll stop there, but map out that client. Who potentially the people that I need to be getting to know and get everyone to like me, not just one person. Where, looking for contact details, looking for little nuggets of info that could spark a conversation, or you might think, oh, that's interesting, that's a little in for me. Or people in common. Are there any candidates that have worked there before? Any people, previous clients that have worked there, or clients know them, and referrals? So all this builds up to better outreach and more strategic outreach. Honestly, if we go back to the mindset thing, it gives them a confidence boost, because they do feel better prepared and they feel like, okay, I can do this, right? I've got all the information I need. And instead of, well, I know I've got to ring them, but I don't really know why what am I going to say? Like, why am I ringing them? They feel more informed. So that for me I find it quite exciting, because it gives me a buzz, because I'm like, oh, I'm going to try and win that client, sort of thing. So for me, I've always enjoyed it. So that is massively key. And I know a lot of agencies are hot on this, but the use of the CRM with BD for me, like, are they actually, okay, we need to put the notes in, we know that, but are they using it effectively for things like creating follow-up reminders? Because the follow-ups are the thing that get missed a lot. They might do those initial 1 or 2 calls, but they get a bit of rejection, and then they forget to follow up, or they might even have a good call but forget to follow up. Are they utilizing all the functions in that CRM to keep these relationships ticking over, to keep warming up these people?
Yes.
Are they also using, I know some agencies will use, create little pockets of clients and send out targeted mailers. So I'm not talking about spam, but okay, these are a group of clients that we're chipping away at the moment. We're having regular convos. Maybe we send them out an automated mailer with, I don't know, salary updates every month, or I'm just making this up. But they're using the data on that CRM as a powerful tool and not letting it sit there. Because you've got lapsed clients half the time sitting on the CRM that no one's doing anything with. Maybe you've even worked with them before and the relationship's fallen out of bed, and they're just sitting there and no one's doing anything with it.
So yes, using it to schedule follow-up, because it is the clients where nothing's gone on that people just forget about, whereas actually that scheduling that follow-up, they're bound to have moved on. But it's very hard.
It's warm.
I have a number of suppliers that I've been known to refer to my clients, and I still forget about them from time to time, because they don't bother to contact me. And and I go, oh yeah, I do know someone who could do with that.
You've got to stay present in people's minds. And I think, again, it's the getting out of your head that everything has to be quick. It takes me sometimes a year to bring a client on. But it's regular checking in, even when they've not got anything for me to help them with, nothing. I've had a couple of conversations like that this morning, but they will pay off, because I'm at the forefront of their mind. We've had a lovely chat. We've had a lovely catch up. I've shared some intel that's helped them. They've shared some intel, which adds to my BD stuff. And the next follow up is in the diary, and it's just keeping going, keeping it ticking over, because that's when clients move at different times. If you want less champagne and razor blades and you want more consistency with your billings, if you're doing consistent BD, or everything will start to drip in at those nice different times. So you've got less highs and lows. So that's when it gets stressful. I remember it.
I think that's a really good note to end on. Consistency in BD is really important, especially perm businesses are very vulnerable to this, where they only BD until they've got a job order and then they stop. I love your point about a reasonable amount of prep before a call. And I would just add that making sure that your team have a reasonable library of collateral that they can use to follow up easily.
Yes.
With a client, a simple slide deck that summarizes key points,
stories to mind that you can talk about. They might not be your story, it might be somebody sitting next to you, it doesn't matter. Storytelling in sales is so powerful because it's a case study essentially, but we don't do that enough. We do not do that enough in recruitment. And if you've got the collateral that you can send after the call, it is so powerful.
Make it
video
easy.
Testimonials.
Yeah.
Don't use them.
And then the final point I would make is that for that bit of where we get to the solution sell, be absolutely clear that all your consultants know what your business's point of difference is, who you work with, and aren't just saying, oh, because we like to build long-term relationships, which listeners will know is one of my absolute pet hates. Kate, this has been fascinating and I feel quite energized by our conversation today.
I do as well. I'm going to go and do some BD now.
So thank you very much for being our guest. Kate, if people would like to talk to you about your work on BD in recruitment, how should they get in touch?
LinkedIn, live on it. So LinkedIn, I'm always on there. Drop me a message. That'd be the best place.
So that is Kate O'Neill, and the O'Neill is with 2 L's, please note. Thank you very much for guesting for me. This is Alison Humphries of Recruitment Leadership, and if you'd like to talk to me about exec and board advisory work, then please reach out to me, alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk. Bye for now, and thanks for joining.
You've been listening to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, review and share so that others can find the podcast too. We really appreciate your support. If you have any questions about the topics covered or wish to find out more about recruitment leadership, please email alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk, referencing the podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, where you can follow Recruitment Leadership and connect with Alison Humphries. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join us next time for another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.